Sockets in Linux. A socket is one endpoint of two-way communication link between two programs running on network. A socket is bound to a port number such that the TCP layer can identify the application the data is destined to be sent at. Definition of socket. A socket is an interface between an application process and the transport layer. The application process can send or receive messages to or from another application process via a socket. We have commonly two socket domains named as Unix domain and Internet domain. Unix domain sockets are a method by which processes on same host can communicate. Internet domain. Socket address space between the connected systems is called Internet domain. This kind of communication uses TCP or IP Internet Protocol suite. The communication is not on the same host, but it is on the different hosts. There are two main types of sockets, UDP and TCP. UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol, whereas TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol. There is also other domain provided by the Unix system, which is Sequential Packet. This is the TCP client-server model. We have methods like bind, listen, accept, send, receiver on TCP server side, whereas we have connect, send, or receive on the client side. Coming to the system calls of TCP/IP protocol. We have socket system call. The syntax is int socket, int family, int type, int protocol, where it returns file socket descriptor or -1 if error occurs. There are three arguments in this function call or system call. One is family, which specifies the protocol family, and the other is type, which is of type int, and it specifies the kind of socket we want, and protocol. Argument should be set to the specific protocol type. Next system call is the bind. Next, the syntax is int bind, int sock ft, struct sock address, int address ln. This bind function assigns a local protocol address to a socket. Next is listen protocol. The listen function converts an unconnected socket into a passive socket, and it receives 0 on success and -1 on error. The next one is accept. This accept function is called by a TCP server to return the next completed connection from the front of the completed connection. Next system call is connect. The connect function is used by a TCP client to establish a connection with a TCP server. So it returns 0 on success or -1 on error. And the next system call is close. This close function is used to close the communication, and it returns 0 on success and -1 on error. This is the UDP client server protocol, where on the client side they uses methods like connect, send to, close. On receiver side, bind, receive from, and send from. And the system calls of UDP protocol are socket and bind. These socket and bind system calls are same as in TCP/IP protocol. They have three arguments as in TCP/IP, and here in the bind the arguments are the same and the function is also the same. The other system call in UDP is receive from, and this receive from function is used to receive data from unconnected datagram sockets. As UDP is connection-less service, we are using unconnected. So it returns the number of bytes read into the buffer or -1 on error. The next system call is send to. This send to function is used to send data over unconnected datagram sockets. The first receive from is to receive the packets, whereas send to is send the packets. This is the difference between the two system calls. And the last system call is close. This is used to close the communication. It returns 0 on success and -1 on error. The TCP client server implementation. There are basically 4 steps in TCP server done by TCP server. The first step is by using this create function, you're creating a TCP socket. and using this bind, a socket is binded to server address. And in listen function, put the server socket in a passive mode where it waits for the client to approach the server to make a connection. Using this accept function at this point, the connection is established between the client and server and they are ready to transfer data. This is the function of TCP server, whereas the next action is to be taken by TCP client, which is creating a TCP socket by using create method and connects newly created client socket to server. This is the implementation of TCP where the communication is one way and in a connected way. Coming to UDP client server implementation, UDP server has 4 steps, that is, first creating UDP socket, bind the socket to server address, wait until the datagram packet arrives from client, process the datagram packet and send a reply to client. This sending of reply to client, this step is absent in TCP, whereas it is available in UDP implementation. This is the function of UDP server. Coming to the UDP client, first thing is creating the UDP socket, and you have to send the message to the server, wait until response from server is received, process reply and go back to step 2 if necessary and send the message. This is the implementation in UDP client server. So the implementation is shown in the figures. This is the UDP client server implementation. Firstly, the client connects and then send to and receive from and close. Next, the server can bind, receive from and send to. This is TCP client server implementation where the socket, it binds and then it can listen, it can accept the connection, it can send or receive, where the client can only connect and send or receive. This is the implementation of TCP and UDP. Thank you.